Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to a quick weekend edition here for your week ahead, right here at Stockwell Day-to-Day News. Everything, stay tuned. This isn't going to take long, but you'll want to hear about possibilities on a peace deal. If this one sounds like it might be real with Iran, you're going to hear about what could be the biggest fight in history coming up to the White House. And that's early on. And we'll also look at Taylor Swift has got people upset. So stay tuned right now. Stockwell Day-to-Day News. Well, the Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has been involved in the discussions relative to Iran and U.S. And he says there's a deal that's ready to be signed within 24 hours. President Trump has been saying that for a few weeks, but this is the first time we've heard the Pakistan Prime Minister. Just keep in mind that the Pakistan Prime Minister has always been a friend of Iran. Why exactly he's involved and Pakistan is raising some questions. But anyway, stay tuned for that. Might be happening. Well, Iran, right at the same time as we see this announcement that a deal is about to be signed, they've come out saying they're in deep discussions with Russia and China. So that's a way of Iran flexing their muscles and saying, hey, don't forget that we got some pretty big supporters here with Russia and China. Remember, China is under severe economic strain while the Strait of Hormuz is continuing to have difficulty because a lot of their products and certainly oil comes through there. So watch for that development. Just switching from, let's say, the sublime to the serious, and you can take it whichever way you like. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce have got some of their fans upset. First of all, they haven't actually declared when and where the wedding's going to take place, but the rumors are that they're going to be putting in a policy of no ring, no bring. That means for whoever is going to be your plus one or your guest to the wedding, you have to either be married or engaged or you ain't coming to the wedding. That's got some people upset. Some people are saying, as those of you who follow Tay as closely as I do, one of her good friends, Gigi Hadid, and to be honest, I don't know if Gigi pronounced her name Gigi or Gigi, but anyway, she's been involved in somewhat of a relationship with Bradley Cooper, another so-called big star, and they might not be invited because they ain't engaged. They don't have a ring, so no ring, no bring. People have said, is this a real policy? Is this a real thing? Apparently it is. If you go back to 2017, if you recall, the princess, Kate Middleton, her sister Pippa was getting married or did get married, and she had a policy of no ring, no bring. And that meant that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, who weren't actually yet married, they were definitely together, but they weren't actually married, they could not go to the wedding. They showed up at the reception. So serious stuff. And it's interesting to see the view. They take a view of people who do wedding planning and all this kind of stuff. And the consensus seems to be among wedding planners is you don't have a right to get an invitation to a wedding. It should be seen as a gift. So you got to go with what the prospective bride and groom wants. We'll see what happens if they change their policy on that. And of course, those of you who are basketball fans, not just this coming week, but in fact, Saturday night, that's tonight, the Knicks, the New York Knicks, could win it with Game 5. They're going to be playing, as you know, they're playing the Antonio Spurs, and they're playing them in San Antonio. So no telling what's going to happen in that game. There are some restrictions on out-of-town visitors or fans, and New York Knicks have continued to live up to a terrible reputation they have as being very violent fans. After the last game, as you recall, you might have seen in the news, kids were attacked. 17-year-old boy was attacked by New York Knicks fans, beaten so badly that he was in a coma, and people are hoping that he lives through that. And of course, there was violence and damage. So pretty insane with the New York Knicks fans or any fans who devolve to that level of stupidity. But keep watching for that. That's tonight and through the week if New York does not win tonight. In Canada, there's an interesting development. The House of Commons, the legislature there, has brought forward social media legislation. They call it the Safe Social Media Act. It's also known as Bill C-34, and it's planned to keep young people, this would be under 16, off the internet. Matter of fact, it's going to ban social media for under 16. A lot of parents think this is a great idea. They say it'll help them in terms of curbing their teens' amount of doom scrolling. We'll see what results from that. And Bill C9, which is the bill that many, many people, including myself, were opposed to for months. This is a bill which removes religious protection, religious rights from Canada's, which are buried in Canada's constitution, now being removed. Canada will now be the world leader in terms of having removal of religious rights, the world leader in terms of democratic nations. Many communist nations, of course, have some of these same provisions. So a lot of people upset there. There will be one amendment that's still being voted on, but not the amendment. The amendment that was being asked for by people right across the country was that the religious rights protection be kept in the bill, which is supposedly there to combat hate. Everybody is, quite rightly, we're opposed to hate and trying to curb that. And so the amendment that was brought forward to put the religious protections back in was voted down. But they are adding one more thing. There's a little amendment. It's to do with hate symbols like the swastika, quite rightly being banned. But they're saying they've added some now, one of them being, the main one being, they're adding the noose. You can't portray a symbol of a noose in a way that could frighten people, so that's going to be there. But protection of Christians, and not just Christians, Jews also, from using certain verses and chapters in the Bible, that is now being taken away. Very scary stuff there in terms of religious freedoms. Well, in terms of the biggest fight at the White House in history will be coming this Sunday, and that will be a mixed martial arts fight. You've been reading about this. An octagon or a ring has been constructed. $60 million ring, all paid for by private sector. This could be, they're saying, the largest, the most viewed mixed martial arts fight in history, because it's going to be at the White House and on the White House grounds. A lot of people going really berserk over that. The fact that it's even taking place, it's taking place on Sunday, by the way. So if you're watching this Saturday, that's tomorrow. Keep in mind that this isn't the first time we've seen something like this at the White House. Way back in 1901, as a matter of fact, when President Teddy Roosevelt was elected, Roosevelt built a boxing ring in the White House. And he regular boxed as president. He boxed competitors there. As a matter of fact, this is not widely known, but in one of those fights that he was having in the White House against a boxer by the name of Dan Moore, he actually got punched. President Roosevelt got punched so hard in the left eye that it damaged his retina. He actually became blind in the left eye for the rest of his life, but didn't tell anybody while he was still president. So there he was, blinded on the left, which maybe shows why he didn't lean too hard to the left. We don't know. So it's not a first time, but it's sure getting the reaction. Well, FIFA, that's the World Cup of Soccer, continues next week. But remember, this thing drags on, or let's say carries on excitedly, depending how you're looking at it, until July 19th. It's not till July 19th in New York City. You'll see the final on that one, on the question and the big discussions and debate going on about a vote on separation that's coming up October 19th in Alberta, Canada. The premier there has just announced, you'll see this being formed next week, a panel is being set up, and they will be discussing and looking at all the arguments in terms of the costs of separation. As you know, I've said consistently, I share all of the grievances that Albertans have with Ottawa, the continued terrible treatment they have suffered at the hands of Ottawa for literally for decades and generations. I share those grievances, but I don't personally believe that passing a vote to separate is going to solve the problems. Matter of fact, it will unleash years of litigation of court cases from every angle possible. And while all of these things are being litigated, of course, you will see a real depression on investment into Alberta. So it would be definitely stagnation for the Alberta economy for many, many years while the question is still being debated. Anyway, that's going to be coming up. Watch for this panel and the types of things they'll be talking about. Remember, Father's Day is coming up, not tomorrow. It's always the third Sunday in June, so you've got all week to prepare and think about the wonderful things you're going to buy and do for Dad. So that's June 21. I bring it up now because you need to make sure you buy your cards and gifts this week. Watch for this week NATO discussions, because there's a big summit coming up, a NATO summit coming up in July in Ankara. And the big issue on the table is, are NATO countries going to step up with increased defense spending? It's worthy of note that since President Trump got very serious and stubborn on this a couple of years ago, there has been an increase in some countries very significantly by European Union countries. They're going to be pushing others to do that. So watch for discussions through the week. China will be releasing some economic reports this week. They're always not wanting to admit that their own economy is having some extreme troubles now, not the least of which is caused by the situation in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz being blockaded and having difficulty there. So watch for growth numbers there in China. This will have some bearing on Canada, because Canada, of course, has already announced they're going to be taking in up to 50,000 Chinese electric vehicles. That's creating problem, as we already talked about. There's legislation being looked at in some of the states. One state in particular is saying they will not allow Chinese electric vehicles from Canada to cross the border. So watch for that development. Gen Z, as we have noted here, this is the first generation to enter adulthood with artificial intelligence, and really shaking the stability of what they're going to be facing in the years ahead. Personally, I look at history any time in history there's been a breakthrough in technology, there's always been a shift and some disturbance in the workforce. And the further result has been more people employed, more innovations discovered and created, and overall standard of living improved. But watch for that. There's going to be reports on that through the week, especially related to Gen Z or Gen Z, and reports still coming out about people are analyzing, is there truly a spiritual renewal going along right now with Gen Z or Gen Z, as they seek stability. I look back into the late 60s, my generation, we weren't seeking stability. We wanted to shake things up. Now we have a generation looking for stability. Have a great week, folks, and enjoy. We'll talk to you on Monday.